Hi everyone, my name is Sydney Ulrich and today I'm going to be giving my presentation over crinoids. The title for my paleontology project is Paleogeographic Investigation on Crinoidea from the Devonian to the Mississippian. Also, I found this background especially for you, Dr. B, so I hope you enjoy it. So a quick outline of what we're going to discuss today. First, we're going to go through an introduction to give some background knowledge on crinoids and the project as a whole. After that, we're going to discuss the analysis of what I did and how I found the information to answer the question that I have. I'm going to then show you the maps that I created to examine the data, and then finally we're going to go through the conclusion of what I found. So what is that crazy title? I took all the big words and broke them down for you, giving them definitions, so you kind of understand what all those massive words mean together. So paleogeographic is a historical geography. This looks a lot at the inland seas and also the orogenies that are happening throughout time. So a map will show you where there were inland seas, where there was ocean, where there were mountains happening, all those important things. Specifically for this project, we're looking at the United States and the distribution throughout the United States. Crinoidea is a type of echinoderm. It is a class um, within the phylum Echinoderms. The Devonian and the Mississippian are the two periods that we are going to be looking at. So the Devonian is from 419 million years ago to 358 million years ago. And the Mississippian is from 358 million years ago to 318 million years ago. The Mississippian is considered part of the Carboniferous, but we're just focusing on specifically the Mississippian today. So a little bit about Crinoidea. Again, it is class. A lot of people call them crinoids, or if you grow up in the Midwest hunting for fossils, you know them as Indian beads because of the way that they look when they are in small fragments. This animal was most prevalent before the Permian and during the Permian, but was majorly affected during the Permian extinction. However, they have survived every single one of the mass extinctions and still live to this day, just in a lot lower numbers. These animals prefer to live in shallow marine environments where they are able to be exposed to the sun as well as nutrients in the water. And within the fossil record, both the stems and the calyxes are preserved. However, the stems are preserved more often than the calyxes, and the calyx is the little cup area that the flowering part comes out of. So the big question that I had going into this project is, why is there such a difference between the localities in which they find the crinoids between the Devonian and the Mississippian? So my analysis for the project, I created maps on the paleobiology database of both the distribution of crinoids for both of those periods, as well as recreating the reconstruction maps to show where the different plates were on Earth at both of those periods. On top of both of those things, I also looked at coastal reconstructions of the region during the time periods to get an idea of where the oceans were and where the inland seas were during those times. So the next few slides are going to show you the maps from the paleobiology database, and then following those are the images of the reconstructions of the coastlines. So the first image we're looking at is the PBDB map of crinoid samples during the Devonian. Now, if we look at this map, specifically at the orange dots, we see that there's not a lot of variation in the localities in which they're found. Most of the samples occurred up in New York, all compacted into that one smaller area, and then with some occurring a little bit farther down the coastline. If you look at the Mississippian period, though, you have all of those shifted over towards the west, and now the major locality is between Kentucky and Indiana. However, if you notice, there is a lot more variation in the localities during the Mississippian versus the Devonian. There's a lot more areas in the west that have found crinoids. So the reconstruction here shows where the plates were located on the globe at the time of the Devonian. So if we look here at this orange area, this is what we were looking at in New York. And notice that it's very close to this black area that is considered the ocean. Now, this is important to remember because, again, these animals like living in shallow marine areas, so it makes sense that they're relatively close to the ocean bodies. And on this one, this is the Mississippian map. We're looking at this mass right here, which again is close to that black line. And this specifically is that Kentucky, Indiana area once again. So this map shows a paleogeographic representation of what the Appalachian area looked like during the Devonian. So if we notice here, this is the state of Pennsylvania, and then this up here would be where New York is. Now, remember that line of those crinoids occurred kind of up in here. So that's really close to the edge of that inland sea. Again, meaning that they were in a very shallow marine environment. This map is a reconstruction of the Mississippian period. And if we look at this map over here or this one, you see that Kentucky and Indiana are right here. Again, very close to that line of where the shallow marine inland sea is occurring. Now here we have two maps side by side. The one on the left is the Devonian and the one on the right is the Mississippian. These two maps side by side really show you the difference between where those shallow marine environments were at those two times. So if we look at this Devonian map, the areas kind of finger out, and it's a very open map or open area up in here. As we're on this one, you have a lot less of that open land that isn't covered by inland sea. So right in this area is where New York would be, up in where it says shales. Again, very close to the edge of where that inland sea is. And then on this map, this would be approximately where those crinoids were found. Again, really close to that line. So if we look at this, the Mississippian map shows that New York was very much a mountainous area as well as a lowland, and these animals were marine animals. They were not able to survive in an area that wasn't a sea. So there's no way that those animals could be existing in the area that they were originally because of that reason. Same for here. A lot of those other localities ended up in that transcontinental arch, which makes sense as to why they're way over here in the Devonian. So the conclusion is that the distribution of crinoids follows the changing coastline. This is because they really do enjoy that shallow marine environment where they're able to get sunlight and nutrients. So as the shallow marine environment moves across the United States, the crinoids will follow. They're not able to survive in those other areas, which occurred after the inland sea had moved across the country. So my pie in the sky. If I were to do this project again, I would look more at the specific species and see whether there's a difference in the locations. I did not do this. With this project, I looked just solely at the class of crinoids as a whole. I would like to see whether there is a difference in what species are at those two locations. Because there's a very much a possibility that the ones that existed in New York wouldn't be able to exist in Kentucky and Indiana. I would like to go to both of those locations to collect my own data on the species that were there, but also I would like to collect more data on like the sizes and other characteristics of the fossils because the paleobiology database did not have a lot of that information to look at. They really just had the localities and then some of the species names. If they do happen to be the same species in those two locations, though, the sizes and other characteristics could show differences between the two areas and would maybe have one being you know, more likely to have those crinoids living there than the other one. So there's a lot of different things that you could do with this project further on that I think would be really interesting to do. But that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope that you all learned something from this. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed.